Okay. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, nahmadu wa nusalli ala rasulil kareem, ma ba'd. Let's start. And on the screen, I hope you're able to see Surah Al-Baqarah written over there. So we're going to start that. And the meaning of Al-Baqarah is the cow. And this is the largest and the biggest, the longest surah in the whole Quran, and covers roughly about 2.5 juz, or in Urdu we call it para or separa. And it has 286 verses. And let's start with what are the virtues of Surah Al-Baqarah. It comes in a hadith of Tirmidhi. The Rasulullah said, close meaning is shaitan runs away from the house where Surah Al-Baqarah is regularly recited. Also, there is a verse that is contained in the Surah Al-Baqarah that is considered as one of the greatest verses of the Quran, of all the Quran, and head of all the verses, and that is called Ayatul Kursi. And shaitan runs away from the place where Ayatul Kursi is recited. Okay. So if we recite Ayatul Kursi and if we blow on certain things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect that. So in the night also when we sleep, it's advisable that we recite Suratul or Ayatul Kursi before we go to bed. Also, the last two verses from Amana Rasul bima unzila ilayk till the end, they are very virtuous verses and also to be recited before going to bed, and they have a lot of rewards and a lot of virtues. All right, so let's look at the highlights of Surah Al-Baqarah. If we talk about one thing, one particular theme that is prominent in the entire Surah Al-Baqarah, then that is the discussion of Yahud or Bani Israel in detail. And Surah Al-Baqarah is majorly about discussing the Bani Israel, in other words, the Yahud. Okay, Yahud and particularly Yahud. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks in detail about what they have done and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have blessed them. Okay. And they were considered as the chosen people and the chosen nation by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, put these words in there that فَضَّلْتُكُمْ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ, you were blessed nation. I blessed you with so many things and blessings. Yet they disobeyed exceedingly, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished them many, many times as well. And eventually, when Sayyid Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given the prophethood, the Yahud knew all about that. But yet they refused to accept him as the prophet, and that also shows their stubbornness. If we look at a slightly more detail, the topics that are contained in there, some of the major ones. This is the surah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given an open challenge to the kuffar of Makkah to create a surah like Al-Quran, one surah like Al-Quran. Um, they used to claim, and that this book, Quran, was written by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They knew that Rasulullah never studied from a teacher. He never studied from anyone, uh, any any person, how to read and write. Okay. So the word used for this is in Arabic is called ummi. A literal translation of the word ummi may be illiterate or someone who who has not learned, who doesn't know how to read and write. But this is not the proper translation when we talk about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We need to keep in mind the personality we are trying to describe. So every and ummi is one of the characteristics of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every characteristic that is described for Rasulullah is a positive characteristic. There's no negativity about any of the things about Rasulullah. So the word ummi must be translated properly. And if someone translates the word ummi as illiterate, nauzubillah, that's a negative thing. I mean, who would consider illiterate to be a positive trait? It's not considered a positive trait. Okay. So respect demands that we are very, very careful with our words when you're describing the Rasulullah, because he was uh, the Afzalul Bashar. He was the most blessed of all the humans that are out there. He was the one who was the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he was the one for whom everything else was created. The whole universe was created because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to create Nabi Pak sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So for these blessed people, like the prophets, like the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, when we talk about them, we have to be very, very careful we use the right words. Even if we are trying to describe something in a positive way, the choice of words must be very, very careful. Otherwise, we may not know and we may be describing something in an inappropriate manner, which itself becomes a sin, even though we may not be aware of that. So I would never describe with the word ummi as an illiterate when it talks about Rasulullah or someone who doesn't know how to read and write. But in the case of Rasulullah, the word ummi must be described as a person for whom nobody was had nobody was capable of becoming a teacher of. That person was Rasulullah. No other human deserved the rank of becoming his teacher. And this is a very, very, when you describe it like this becomes a very positive trait. This becomes a means of excellence for Rasulullah. Okay. Nobody in among the people deserved the rank to become his teacher. His teacher was directly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His teacher was Jibreel alayhi salam. So the kuffar used to claim, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, okay, if you think, if this is what you think, that the Prophet sallallahu um, crafted, na'udzubillah, the Quran himself, then you are better poets and writers than him. Why don't you, or in your opinion, you can write better and stuff, and you are bigger poets as what you claim. So why don't you go ahead and craft something which is anything like just one surah of the Quran? And they tried and they failed. So there is a challenge to create a surah like Al-Quran. That's in Surah Baqarah. Then there is a story of making Adam alayhi salam a Khalifa on earth, and the conversation of the angels with Rasulullah, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the story about how the shaitan tricked and everything, and then sending and descending of the Adam alayhi salam and his wife Hawa to earth. Then, so that's a whole story there. Then there is an in detail discussion of Yehud or Bani Israel. And then continuing with the story of Bani Israel. Now, Bani Israel or Yehud, as I said before as well, there's a very strong link of Bani Israel with this ummah, the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why in the whole Quran the stories are scattered, and and again Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeat fragments of those stories in different contexts. And one of the biggest surah which contains the biggest account of Bani Israel is Surah Al-Baqarah. It also talks about the widespread use of black magic in Bani Israel among the Yehud, and the sending down of the two angels, Harut and Marut, as test, and we're going to talk about that as well. Then the story of Sayyidina Hazrat Uzair alayhi salatu salam, who was a prophet, and that prophet was also sent to the Bani Israel. And we're going to talk about that as well. Then this story covers the, when Hazrat Sayyidina Uzair radiallahu ta'ala an, was, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put him to sleep for 100 years, and he woke up and his donkey was dead, and all he could see was the bones of the donkey, and but the food was intact and all of that thing. When he was passing by Palestine, when the Palestine or Al-Qudus was destroyed by uh, Bukhtasar, ruler of Iran. So, so that story is mentioned in there as well, and that's also about Bani Israel. Then the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam, how they built the Kaaba, and encounters of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam with the king Namrud, who used to be who used to rule over Babylon in Iraq. Then Surah Al-Baqarah also contains the verses on the change of Qibla when the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina along with his companions, and in the Makkah as well, when the Salah was ordained, the Qibla originally was Al-Qudus, Beit al-Maqdis, and Palestine. And when Muslims migrated for some time in Medina, also the Qibla was the same. And that made the Jews or Yahud very happy. But then all of a sudden, one day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to have the Qibla changed from Al-Qudus to Baitullah in Mecca. And Rasulullah was performing salat, was leading the salat, and during the salat that Wahi came and ordered Rasulullah to change the Qibla, and everybody changed Qibla along with that. And then the Jews started gossiping about that, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave a reasoning for that, that every direction is Allah's direction. Okay. And Allah can pick any direction and choose any direction for Muslims. And Allah is not answerable to anyone. There doesn't have to be a particular reason or arguments to be told to people. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains the arguments or reasoning behind a hukum, a command, and at times Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just ignores all of that thing, and Allah says, "This is it because I say so," and no arguments are no reasonings is explained behind all of that. And then a, a bunch of ahkam or commands are described in this surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given commandments talks about Hajj and Umrah. Halal and haram, ahkam of halal and haram food are given here. Ahkam of qisas. Okay, qisas is basically is killing the murderer as a punishment. Ahkam of fasting is mentioned in there. Ahkam of murtad. A murtad is a person we just talked about last time. We talked about different personalities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned: mu'mineen, muslimin, and then siddiqeen, shuhada, salihin. And then among the kuffar, we talked about the mushrikeen, the mulhideen, and the murtadeen, and the munafiqeen. So, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about murtad. A murtad is a person who leaves, who used to be a Muslim, and then he decides to leave Islam and become whatever, take other religion or become atheist or whatever. And his leaving Islam is a big sin and a major sin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the ahkam of murtad in this. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the ahkam of doing nikah with mushrik women or ladies. And Ahlul Kitab are separate out from it, even though Ahlul Kitab, some of the Ahlul Kitab are mushrikin, not all of the Ahlul Kitab are mushrik. Some of the Ahlul Kitab are mushrik, but yet the ahkam of mushrikeen don't fall on them. They are considered as a separate group of people, a separate category and class of people, Ahlul Kitab, and permission to marry with their women was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we talk more about that when we come to that. Then there Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the ahkam of the menses, then the ahkam of talaq, ahkam of breastfeeding a baby, and ahkam of interest or riba. All of these ahkam are mentioned. Um, Surah Al-Baqarah is considered as a Madani surah. Most of the verses were revealed in Medina. So not all verses are revealed in Medina. Some verses will probably would have been revealed in Mecca. But the rule, as we talked about last time, was that if the majority of the verses in any particular surah were revealed before Hijrah, then that surah is classified as a Makki. And if the majority of the verses in a surah were revealed after Hijrah, then the surah is classified as Madani surah. And there are certain characteristics of Makki surahs, there are certain characteristics of Madani surah. Makki surahs, most of the time, they talk about Tawheed, Risalat, and Akhirat because they were dealing with people who were either mushrik, so need to talk about Tawheed. Um, People among the kuffar of Makkah, there were people who were atheist, who would not believe in a God, okay, who would not believe in life after death. So Akhirat was talked about, Risalat was talked about, and the fundamental da'wat of Islam was given to them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would introduce himself and talk about the construction of the universe and give dalail to the atheist about the existence of a higher being, which is God, which is Allah, all of that thing. So and so so most of the verses in Makki surahs are about da'wat, fundamental da'wat to Islam. And very few will talk about any hukum because most of the ahkam were given to Muslims after they migrated to Medina when they established a riyasat there, an administration over there. But during the 13 years of Mecca, they were faced with lots and lots of hardships and troubles. And it was a test of Iman and a test of and a development exercise for their souls and hearts and souls. So there were very few hukam over there in Mecca. But when they moved to Medina and Rasulullah SAW and the Muslims formed a government over there and took control of the Medina with the help of the Muslim Ansar tribes there, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started sending different ahkam. And so Madani surahs have a characteristic that they contain lots and lots of ahkam and details about different social aspects, business aspects, and whatever, in international relationships. And Madani Surah also talks about Yahud and Nasara as well, because in Medina, in Mecca, the people that were living there, they were almost very little people, Ahlul Kitab were there, okay? Some Nasara maybe a little bit, but in Medina there were like the there are tribes and tribes of Yehud as well who knew long before from their Torah that a last prophet is going to come, and that prophet is going to be on the in the land where the date palm trees are, in the desert area, whatever. And then they searched for that area and they found Medina to be to contain those signs and symptoms, and so they started settling down in large quantities, in large numbers in Medina because they were used to having a big number of prophets from among them. From the times of Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salam, all the prophets that came till Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, all of them were from Bani Israel. And they were sent in Bani Israel, for Bani Israel, from among them. Prophets are always from among the people they live in. And so they expected that the last prophet, which is talked about in Torah, every prophet was told that the last prophet is going to come. Every prophet was given the glad tidings that there was going to be a last prophet with such and such characteristics. and his companions would have such and such characteristics. The Sahaba were also talked about in the last books, in previous books. So they were expecting that the last prophet is also going to be from among them. And so they wanted to move to that place and they wanted to get settled and they wanted to get married to the women over there so that anyone who's born as a prophet should get born from among their progenies. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had something different in mind, and Rasulullah sallam was not born in Yehud, he was not born in Bani Israel, but he was born in Quraysh. So one of the signs of one of the characteristics of Madani Surah is that it talks about Yehud, and Yehud were not present in Makkah. Okay, and then Nasara also were there, and then um, uh, um, the talks about a lot of ahkam as well as da'wat. Rasulullah started sending messages of da'wat and tabligh to other nations. Okay, so international relations established, and we find out the rules for those as well in Madani surahs. Okay, so this is the highlights of Surah Al-Baqarah. So there is a something about if we explain like if you talk about one prominent emerging theme in the whole surah, and that's about the detailed introduction and discussion of Yehud of Bani Israel. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them with, and what did they do in return, and their misguidance and their rudeness and their disobedience is Allah explains in so much detail about those things. And the reason is that because one of the reasons is because we will be dealing with them in you know as a nation, interacting with them. This ummah will always be in, be against working against Yahud and Nasara. And the other thing is because Rasulullah said that this ummah will follow the footsteps of Bani Israel. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned us by narrating in detail the unacceptable things that those people did and what Allah punished them, how Allah punished them. So this is it's kind of warning to us that you're going to be falling, people among you will be doing the same similar things, and so be careful about that because this is unacceptable for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So that's the emerging theme, the in the whole Surah Al-Baqarah. And then going in a little bit detail, challenge to create Surah Al-Quran, story of Adam alayhi salam making made as a Khalifa, and then black magic in Bani Israel, Harut and Marut, the two angels, the story of Hazrat Uzair alayhi salam, story of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail building Kaaba, encounters of Ibrahim alayhi salam with Namrud, and his throne and him getting thrown in the fire, and then Allah protecting him, change of Qibla verses, and then tons and tons of ahkam on all of these things. So let's move forward with some of the things. Okay, so um, as we said in Suratul Fatiha, we were talked about غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. So the first maghdub indicates Yahud, and then Zalin indicate Nasara, and both are from Bani Israel. And so the first surah after Surah Fatiha, Surah Al-Baqarah talks about Yahud, and the next surah after Baqarah, which is Al Imran, talks about the Nasara. Okay, so that's Okay. So, so Rasulullah said, you will follow the wrong ways of your predecessors so completely that if they should go into the hole of a lizard, that means do senseless things, you will also go over there. And Sahaba said that we said, oh Rasulullah Sallallahu, do you mean the Jews and the Christians? Right? He replied, whom else? Meaning, of course, Jews and the Christians. Right? And isn't this exactly what we have started doing? That whatever they do, we are following them. They're doing senseless stuff, we are doing senseless stuff. They're doing celebrating things like Halloween, which is doesn't make sense, totally senseless things. And we also started celebrating those. They celebrate New Year's, again, totally meaningless stuff. We also started doing all of those things. So another hadith Rasulullah said, which is from Sunan Ibn Majah, Kitab al-Fitan, that Rasulullah said, my ummah will face what Bani Israel faced step by step. Even if one of them approached his mother in an incorrect way, inappropriate way, there will be one of my ummah who will approach his mother like that. The people of Israel divide into 72 sects, and my ummah will divide into 73 sects. All of them are in the hellfire, and one of them is in paradise. We asked Ya Rasulullah, who is the protected one? Who is the saved one? The sect, which sect will be the successful one? Rasulullah said, the one that is on my path and the path of my companions. All right. So he included both his sunnah and the sunnah of his blessed companions, the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala majma'in. So we cannot ignore Sahaba, right? In order to understand what is the sunnah of Rasulullah, we have to actually look at the sunnah of the Sahaba. All right. So what is Bani Israel? It means Bani means children, and Israel was actually the title given to or Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salam, the prophet Yaqub, who was the son of Ishaq alayhi salam, and Sayyidina Ishaq alayhi salam was the son of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So Israel in Hebrew means Abdullah, son of slave of Allah. So Yaqub alayhi salam's nickname or title was Israel, and his children became known as Bani Israel or children of Israel. And this is the main topic of Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Baqarah. Okay, so let's look at the lineage of Bani Israel. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi was known as the Abul Anbiya, father of the prophets, because the largest number of prophets came in his generation. Okay, so he had two sons, Ismail alayhi and Ishaq alayhi. Ismail alayhi was the elder son, and Ishaq alayhi was the younger one. Um, we claim, our Quran tells us that Ismail alayhi was Zabihullah, that he was the one who Ibrahim alayhi uh, tried to sacrifice on the order of Allah, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replaced him with a sheep, and the sheep was sacrificed. And so the title was given to him was Zabihullah. Yahud claim that no, it was Ishaq alayhi salam, and that Ishaq alayhi salam was the elder son, and they manipulate. And of course, we reject it because our Quran tells us what our Quran tells us. We're going to believe in that. And for the other thing is, none of the previous book, the Torah, or the Injil, or the Zabur, none of them are in their original form right now. All have been modified, and nobody knows what the original version of them is. Okay, even those people who follow those books, they agree upon that. Then their books are no longer in their original form, and they've been changed and they've been modified. While Quran, both the friends and the enemies, the friends and the foes, both agree that Quran hasn't changed even a little bit, even a tiny thing, even a single letter has not changed in there. So you will not find, even though there are, Christians and Jews, they hate Islam, even though there are scholars that hate Islam and they're trying to oppose them and criticize all the time, you will not see a single criticism that their book has been changed. All right. And they will accept it. We will in against Quran, if our Quran tells us something and their books tell something else, obviously we cannot accept it because their books are not in their correct form and shape and modified. So Ismail is Zabiullah, Ishaq is not Zabiullah. Ismail was the elder son. Ishaq was not the elder son. But both of them were prophets. And then from Ishaq his son Yaqub was a prophet, and he was titled as Israel. And then his children were Bani Israel, which were he had 12 sons. Yusuf the most prominent one, and his younger brother Binyamin were from one mother, and the rest of the 10 sons were from another mother. Okay, so they were step brothers. And from these together are known as Bani Israel, or the children of Israel, or children of Yaqub. Okay, and from there, a progeny of prophets started. So Musa salam came from their progeny. Then Yusha ibn Nun, uh, then Shamwil salam, then Dawood salam, then Sulaiman salam, then Uzair salam, and then Zakaria salam, and then Yahya salam, and then Isa salam, in that order. And it's possible that there might be other prophets in between, but Quran talks about these, and so we are given knowledge only about these things and in this order. And then after Isa salam, we know for sure that no prophet came other than Rasulullah sallam, and that he was from the progeny of Ismail salam in Mecca. And so this is the lineage of Bani Israel. So because there were 12 sons, there were 12 tribes of Bani Israel. So let's take a little look at the map. Okay. So that's Google Map I opened up, and it's Ibrahim salam was in Iraq, which the old name of Iraq was Mesopotamia. And one of the prominent city in Iraq was Babylon. Okay, so this is Iraq. Sorry, this is Iraq. So this is Iran, and this tiny border. This is Iraq. So Iraq is much smaller than Iran. Iran is huge, and this place is Babylon. And Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam used to be over here. And Namrud also used to be here. He was the king there. And we know that the Namrud started claiming to be God, and people would worship him, and Ibrahim alayhi salam refused to worship. And Ibrahim alayhi salam's father used to make idols, and they used to worship both Namrud and a bunch of different idols. And Ibrahim alayhi salam retaliated against that. And his father once uh, gave him an idol because his father used to make idols, and told him to go and sell that idol in the market. And of course, he was the Nabi of Allah, he couldn't do that. So what he did was he made a fun out of that idol. What he did, he tied a rope to the neck of the idol, and he threw the idol on the ground, and he started dragging that idol with the rope on his neck, and he started um, calling out loudly that like a salesman, but using the words like, my father's God is on sale. Anybody wants to buy it? And that was like, the fun he was making, um, because obviously that was a wrong thing to worship. So obviously, who's going to buy a god who is being dragged on the ground in such a humiliating way? That's how he used to do. And then once he found an opportunity, he sneaked into the the uh, the place where they used to keep all the idols for worshiping when everybody else was busy in partying, and he uh, took an axe with him and he broke down somebody's ears and some idol's nose and some idol's hand and stuff. And then he left the bigger idol, the biggest one, intact, and he put the axe in his hand. And when people came back after their celebration, then they found that somebody has, massacred their gods or idols or whatever. And then they knew that Ibrahim alayhi salam used to criticize, and so they uh, um, took him to trial. And Namrud eventually ordained for him a punishment to be thrown into a fire, and they burned a huge big fire, and then they threw him in there, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him, and by issuing directly a command to the fire, Ya naru kuni bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim. At that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not send any angel, but angels were looking at this, that the Prophet of Allah is about to being thrown into the fire, and they asked Allah, "Oh Allah, if you're gonna do something about it," and they asked Allah's permission that if you allow us to go and help him, so Allah gave them permission. If you want to help him, go ahead. And then the angels approached Ibrahim alayhi salam. He was tied up uh, and about to be thrown, and angels started asking Ibrahim alayhi salam that if he allowed them, they could turn off the fire and they could set him free. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a lot of power to angels. And Ibrahim alayhi salam asked them one question, that did Allah are you sent by Allah? He said, no, Allah did not explicitly send us, but we took permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah allowed us to come and approach you. He said, if Allah hasn't sent you, I don't need your help. So then the angels left, and eventually he was thrown into the fire, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly issued commands to the fire, not involving any intermediary creation or angels or anything. And Allah says, "Oh fire, cool down and be a source of safety for Ibrahim alayhi salam." And the fire burned the ropes and everything, but he was saved, and he spent a number of days in there. And he used to say that some of the best days in his life were those days that he spent in the fire. Eventually, he got out of that, and then Namrud was killed, and then he left Babylon, and then he migrated to a number of different places. So um, some of the different places that he migrated to by the order of Allah, he went to Egypt. Okay, so from Iraq over there, he went to some place over here. Okay. And this is Egypt in the top portion of the Africa. And we don't really know which part of Egypt he actually go to, but it could be maybe Memphis or so, because Memphis was one of the most prominent cities at that time, and a center of lots of activities. Over there, so he migrated with his wife, Sarah alayhi salam, Sarah, and then the one of the Fir'aun was ruling Misr at that time, or Egypt at that time, and he was a different Fir'aun. Um, most famous Fir'aun is one who went against Musa alayhi salam, but Musa alayhi salam is not going to come yet. He has to come later on. So there was some other Fir'aun, and that Fir'aun tried to approach Sarah, as a Sarah in privacy, but anytime he would try to approach, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would stop him by turning him blind, and he wouldn't be able to see. And eventually he realized that what he's trying to do, he's trying to approach a pious lady who's close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he set her free. And then he, as a compensation, he gave his daughter Hajra alayhi salam in marriage to Ibrahim alayhi salam. Okay. And so this is one narration. This is kind of a one point of view. And the other one opinion, and the other opinion is he gave Hajra as a slave to Hazrat Sarah, and then Hazrat Sarah um, gave her as a gift to Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he married her. So he eventually became his wife in either case. Then from there, from Egypt, Ibrahim alayhi salam and his families, they migrated to Canaan. And Canaan is a place in Palestine. And as you see, they have removed Palestine from the map. So they call it Israel now. And this is one of the corruption of Western nations over here. Nobody accepts, none of the Muslims countries accept Israel. And yet, in all the maps now, they have removed the word Palestine and they call it now Israel. And this is something we don't accept. But anyways, this is the place Canaan as a city, and which is close to Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is the name given to Al-Qudus. Jews call it Jerusalem, but the Muslim name is Betul Maqdis or Al-Qudus, the city of Al-Qudus. Okay. And Christians call it Ilu. So there are three different names given by three different nations. So Muslims call it Al-Qudus, the city of Al-Qudus. Yahud call it Jerusalem, and Christians call it Ela. The three different names given to those. But because it's been occupied, we call it occupied Palestine now. We don't call it Israel, but it's occupied Palestine. And they have replaced the names with whatever names they like. So Ibrahim salam moved from Misr over here to Canaan, and he settled down over there. Somewhere now, some of the things are not exactly clear, and so somewhere during this time, Ismail salam was born. So we're not sure that whether Ismail salam was born in Misr, in Egypt, or whether he was born in Canaan. But one of the places he was born. And after the birth of Ismail salam, after the birth of Ismail salam, Ibrahim salam was ordered to go to Mecca with his wife Hajra and his baby Ismail salam and leave both of them there. So he traveled, if he were here, Canaan, he traveled from here to Medina, to Mecca, sorry. Okay, over here. Or if he were in Egypt, then he would have traveled somewhere from here all the way to Mecca. And Mecca at that time was an uninhabited place. Nobody was there, just barren land and rocky mountains and stuff, and black rocky mountains. And there were no life over there, no no plantation, no one was living around that area. And we know the story that he left Hajar alayhi salam and his son Ismail alayhi salam. And then because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to inhabit that place, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to start the Ummatul Muslima from the progeny of Ismail alayhi salam, and so all of that was um, staged over here. And then he uh, went back to Canaan, okay, and over there he was living with his wife, Hazrat Sarah, and there Ishaq alayhi salam was born. And the birth of Ishaq alayhi salam was a miracle as well, because Hazrat Sarah has become very old and has reached an age where women lose their fertility and they're no longer able to procreate or give birth. And the angels were actually going to Lut alayhi salam's nation. Okay, so this is the Black Sea, the Dead Sea over there. This place originally was inhabited. All of this watery area that you see, the water body, there was no sea at that time over here. But this whole piece of water body was occupied by the nation of Lut alayhi salam. And those were, as we know, those were involved in the major sin of homosexuality. And Lut alayhi salam tried his best and he couldn't um, convert them, I couldn't turn them away from the sin. And so eventually the angels were sent to send up to you know, give punishment to the nation of Lut. So while they were going to this place, they passed through Canaan and visited Ibrahim alayhi salam, and they were in the form of humans. And Ibrahim alayhi salam thought they were guests, some people who are travelers, and so he was a very, very hospitable person. Ibrahim salam is popular for being extremely hospitable to guests. He would not have, he's known to never eat a meal without having a guest share it. And so as soon as he saw these few people, he thought they're travelers, and he slaughtered a calf, cooked it up, and then he brought them and put them as uh, a meal for them. But those angels, they did not take the meal, and so he found it strange, their behavior, and he was scared. Who are these? And then they said to him, "Look, we are angels. Don't be afraid, and we are here to give you glad tidings. You're gonna get a son." And uh, he wondered that, I'm old, my wife is old, we passed beyond the age, and the angel said, "Don't worry about that. This Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do whatever Allah likes." And then they told him, "We are actually going to the nation of Lut to finish them all, because they are transgressors and they're not listening." So yeah, then the punishment was sent to the nation of Lut, and they took that piece of land, and they raised it to the sky, and then they flipped it, and they threw it back down, and it sunk into the ground, and eventually it was covered with water, and such was the consistency of the water that it's so salty and so full of other things that no sea life could survive in here. So there's no fish, no life at all in these waters, and so it's called Dead Sea. So, anyways, so Isa alayhi salam was born here, and then when he grew up, he got the prophethood, and then his son Yaqub alayhi salam, who was called the Israel, then he was given prophethood. So one after the other in the family, prophets were born, and then Yaqub alayhi salam had 12 sons. And out of those, Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was given a prophethood. So we know the story that Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam was uh, young and he was beautiful, and the rest of his 10 brothers got jealous and then threw him in one of the dry wells of Canaan. And then a tribe was passing by, and they stopped to get water from the well, and they found a little boy in there, and they took him out, and he was so beautiful. They decided to take him as a property at that time. They used to buy and sell trades and stuff. And that tribe from here was actually traveling from Canaan all the way to Misr, to Egypt. All right. So this is Canaan over here, right? And from here all the way to most likely Memphis. So we're not really sure about that, but pretty much we expect that it's Memphis, and this is like 400 kilometers distance that they traveled. Okay, so they took Yusuf alayhi salam over here in Memphis, and they sold him over here. And then he was bought by one of the governors, and then he raised him. And the story of Yusuf alayhi salam will come inshallah later on in the surah of Yusuf alayhi salam. We talk about that in there. Eventually, so Yusuf alayhi salam grew up, and he was able to secure a leadership, an administrative position, a governorship uh, of Misr. And then there was um, a draft that hit all of the areas in a large area of land, and people, and because of the strategy of Yusuf alayhi salam, Misr was able to store the food, and was able to not only help themselves but help other regions as well. So now uh, the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam found out that Misr is being very, very helpful to other people, and they are, so because they were also hit by the draft, they didn't have anything to eat as well. So they also traveled from Canaan, and at that time, by that time, so the Yaqub alayhi salam, he lost his eyesight because of crying sexually for Yusuf, for missing Yusuf alayhi salam, and nobody knew where he was. And so the brothers traveled all the way from Canaan to uh, Misr, Memphis, most likely, and then you know, um, they took their share of the food that was, they were distributing. And eventually they found out it was Yusuf salam was his brother who was the governor, and then they brought Yaqub salam and the whole family, and eventually settled in Misr over here, and they left Canaan, and they lived over there. Uh, as time passed, Yusuf salam died, and then some other person took over as a king of Misr, and eventually you know uh, the government was taken away from the Bani Israel. Okay, and all of the Bani Israel by that time they lived over there, they spread over there, their family, their numbers increased. They were eventually made slaves by the new ruler or the new Pharaoh over there, and those people were called Qibti, and they were made slaves, and for generations and generations they were treated as slaves, and very, very badly and very, very poorly. Among them, among the Bani Israel, then eventually uh, the Ramesses too took over as Pharaoh, which we call the Pharaoh of the Musa alayhi salam. And then he was told that a child will be born from among the people here in Bani Israel, who will kill you and take control of the country from you. So the soothsayers, he had magicians and stuff who predicted that. And so he started killing all the male children of Bani Israel. But then they found out that, look, if he killed all of them, then there will be no one left to serve them as slaves. Okay, so the Pharaoh and the Qibtis used to use Bani Israel to do lots of slave works, like constructions of the pyramids. And so you know, um, the area around this is also the area where you will find lots of pyramids. So the area of Giza is here somewhere. Okay. And so a lot of the major pyramids are constructed in this area. So the Bani Israel used to be used for construction of these things. They were used as masons, and because of that, they started calling themselves. Now they formed an organization called Freemasons, and in remembrance of what they used to go through. So Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam was born, and so they decided, look, if we kill every year, if we're gonna kill the Bani Israel boys, we will eventually have no one to work for us. So why don't you kill on one year and don't kill on the other year? Alternate, do it like killing on the alternate years. So Harun alayhi salam, the brother of Musa alayhi salam, was born on the year in which they stopped killing, and then the other year Musa alayhi salam was born, and the mother of Musa alayhi salam, he put Musa alayhi salam in a basket and floated him in the Nile. So this is the river Nile, um, that's flowing there. Okay. So and eventually he was picked up by the palace of the Pharaoh also was somewhere around next to Nile, and he was picked up by the Pharaoh and adopted as a son, and he grew up. And when he was young, he was trying to stop a fight, and he stopped a fight between the two people. And one person was not listening to him, and he punched him, and that person died. That news went to, and that was a Qibti. That news went to Pharaoh, and he heard that they were planning to uh, take him as a captive, as a prisoner, and put him into jail. So he ran from there, Musa alayhi salam. Um, he took off from Memphis, somewhere in the Memphis. That's where the large number of Bani Israel were inhabited. And he most likely either he punched the person over here in Memphis or in Pi Ramesses. And this was a new capital formed by the Pharaoh, the Ramesses II. So either from here, either this incident of punching and killing that person happened here or here, one of the two places. But no matter from where it happened, Musa alayhi salam took off from there and to protect himself, and then he traveled um, to uh, Sinai, the desert Sinai. So this is the desert Sinai, okay? And he crossed all of it, and there are mountain ranges and hills and desert plains and stuff. And either he crossed, this is also a branch of Red Sea, a kind of a canal there. Crossed through here, or he crossed from on top of it, and he reached a city called Madian. And that was the city which was inhabited by Shuaib alayhi salam. And Shuaib alayhi salam was the prophet there, doing da'wah to his nation. And there, the famous incident took place when because he was a traveler, he was poor at that time. He had no resources. He came from traveling from a far distance. He saw in there that there were a group of people were watering their animals, and then there were two girls who were sitting there, and nobody would bother to water their animals or help them in any case. And on top of that, when they would leave, they covered the well from which they were taking out the water with a huge big rock, and those girls were not able to move that rock. And so Musa alayhi salam helped those girls water their animals, and they eventually took him to their home. And this is talked in detail in Surah Al-Qasas. And then Shuaib alayhi salam took him as a servant, and he spent 10 years under the training of the Prophet Shuaib alayhi salam. Eventually, Shuaib alayhi salam married, gave one of his daughter in marriage to him. And then he left from there, from Madian, going back to his home in uh, Misr, over here, Memphis, somewhere. So again, we don't know whether he passed through a boat or ferry through this Red Sea thing, or he traveled from on the top from the other side. But eventually he crossed it, and he was moving, and then he lost his way. And then this incident took place close to Mount Tur, and that's where the famous incident happened when he was given prophethood. Okay, so if you look at the 3D view, that's Mount Tur, and it's slightly black in color, and because you know the tajalli of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Bani Israel asked, and Musa alayhi salam asked Allah to show himself to Allah, to show himself to Musa alayhi salam, then the tajalli, what we call the tajalli of Allah, fell on the mountain, and it burned that mountain. And so you see that it's blacker than the rest of the mountains over there. So somewhere here he dropped, or he stopped, and he camped, and he left his slave and his wife, who was pregnant. And then he saw the fire burning on top of the mountain somewhere. And you see, these are very, very weird kind of mountains over here. And then he went on top of the mountain, and then he discovered that that fire also was a very weird kind of fire. And he was given prophethood, and then told to go to Firaun. And he was given a couple of miracles there as well. And so from here, he went back to Misr. Okay. So this is Mount Tur, and all of that is the Sinai Desert. And so he traveled all the way, and he came back to Memphis, and he started giving dawat. Okay. And he spent a lot of years over there giving dawat to Bani Israel, and doing their islah, and doing their correction and rectification, and giving dawat to Pharaoh and stuff. And we know the incidents of the magician, which will also come in other surahs, Surah Taha, and other surahs as well. But then eventually he was given order by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take the Bani Israel out, because they were suppressed, and they were tortured, and they were made slave. And so he took Bani Israel from here, and one night, and they planned, obviously, and then one night he left with all the Bani Israel, and they were like thousands in number. And probably their plan was to take the direction from the land route, because what you see over here, the Suez Canal, this Suez Canal didn't exist at that time, because this is a modern construction. Okay, but at that time this was just a one piece of land. So their plan was to take the land route. But what happened was they left at night, and as they were moving, there were so many of them, they got lost. And then they realized that Pharaoh was chasing them with his army. And so they got, again, they got very scared. And so they missed the route. And they ended up next to the Red Sea. This is the branch of Red Sea. Okay. And again, this is our speculation. We really don't know, because it's not part of Quran and Sunnah. It's part of history, right? And Quran and Hadith don't mention the names of the places, uh, but books of history do. And so we are speculating. And so none of the book actually mention a place where the Bani Israel were living. Well, it's my research, and it could be wrong, but it's my research and my speculation that they were probably they were inhabiting Memphis, and from there they most likely they took this route and they ended up somewhere over here. And this is totally my speculation. All right, it's not found in any book at all, because it's not the information is not there. The historical account is also not present in any book. And from there, so when the Bani Israel they hit the shore, they were surprised. They were scared again, because this is not what they were targeting. They actually were targeting to go from the land route. And this we learned because of their comment, that when they hit the shore of the sea, then Bani Israel was extremely scared, because they knew that Pharaoh was following them with the army, and they didn't have resources. They didn't have boats or ships with them. So they know they realized they're stuck. Because on one side, in the front, there's sea, and in the back, there's Pharaoh. They have nowhere to turn and nowhere to go. And so the Quran mentions their comments as, Inna la mudrakun, O Musa, you have destroyed us, Na'uzubillah. So they were very rude people. They were very disobedient, very rude, and they behaved extremely badly with the prophets. And so when they realize that they're stuck and they have nowhere to go, going forward is the sea, and going back is Pharaoh approaching them with his grand army. So and he will very likely kill all of them and punish them for leaving without his permission. So they started acting very rude to Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam was calm because he was the prophet of Allah, and he said, um, "Inna ma'iya Rabbi." I don't worry, and you shouldn't worry, because my Lord is with me, my Allah is with me, my Rabb is with me. And then he was ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take his asa and stick and staff and hit the water with his staff, and he did that, and the water then just divided into seven different pathways. Um, and the water separated and moved, and then the Bani Israel with their horses and their animals, they descended down to the floor of the sea, and they walked all the way. So there were 12 tribes, and there were 12 pathways made in the water miraculously by the will of Allah, and every tribe knew which pathway was for them, and then they walked. And by the time, as they reached like midway into the Gulf, Pharaoh approached at the seashore, and then they started following their footsteps. By the time they reached in the middle, the Bani Israel had already reached to the other side, and as they left, as they came out, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the sea to join back together, and then, you know, Pharaoh and his army, all of them were drowned. And at that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised that Allah will preserve his body for the progeny to see. And the historical records, again, this is also not so clear and not so sure of that, but we speculate that his body was discovered on the shore somewhere over here, in an area known as Ras Gharib. Okay, and people picked it up, and they realized, and again, this is a speculation because none of the history books talk anything about it. But by looking at different accounts and combining different things, this is what I have reached to a conclusion, and it's totally a speculation, and I don't claim any authenticity in there, because that's the best we can do. That very likely, what people soon after the body would have been washed out, and people realized at that time, that he was a king, he was so and so pharaoh and so king, and so they took the body and they buried, and they took it over here to this place, which is called the Valley of Kings. Okay, so from there all the way, his body must have found somewhere on the shores of this area, and then they took it and they buried it in the Valley of Kings. So this was a common burial grounds of lots of kings and pharaohs. Okay, there were original tradition was to make pyramids for them, and there were pyramids in the area of Giza. Okay, and so there are pyramids spread out over here, but that tradition stopped. And by the time Ramesses II, which is the pharaoh of the Musa alayhi salam, came up on the throne, they stopped building pyramids, and that's what the history says. And then they started burying them in what they call Valley of Kings, and that's from there when the modern digging took place, excavation took place. They found out many burials of kings and royal people there from there. And one of them was that pharaoh. And how did they discover that it was the pharaoh of Musa alayhi salam? Is because when they analyzed it, they realized that he contains traces of seaweed in his body. Okay, and that was the only king we knew of who was actually drowned. And so from there, it was understood that it's most likely that is the pharaoh who was drowned in there. So, anyways, so they crossed the Red Sea, most likely from here. And again, I'm going to say I'm giving as a disclaimer. It's just in speculation because none of the history books talk anything about it. It's just my own research. And then they started traveling towards Mount Tur because that's what probably Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him to. And um, and when they came over here, this very much is looks like that this is the place where they would have camped because they were like in huge number. Bani Israel was in huge number, and they camped in this valley or wadi, and then Musa alayhi salam left them here, and then he traveled to Mount Tur to get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to talk to Allah, to converse from Allah, and get the book of Torah. Because Bani Israel said, put a demand there. They're very, very demanding people, and they said, Musa, we want a holy book for us so that we know the commandments from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can follow them and this and that. And then so he asked, Musa asked Allah, and Allah says, okay, you come and spend 40 days on the tour, and when you're done, I'll give you the book. And so Torah was revealed all at once and sent written on written on tablets. And so while Musa was here, spending 40 days in seclusion, uh, and getting prepared to receive the book, uh, the Bani Israel, who were most likely camped over here, among them, there was a magician and there was a crooked person called Samri who did some magic, and he took the gold and jewelry of all the Bani Israel, and he put it in a fire and melted it, and he crafted out of it a calf, a golden calf, and then he put some magic spell into it, and then golden calf started to uh, make noises. And then he said to those people, "Look, Musa Islam is no long is not here, and we don't know when he's coming back. But this calf, Nauzubillah, is your God, say Lord." And so a big number of Bani Israel started worshipping that calf, and a big number also. So basically, they divided into three of them, and into three groups. One group started worshiping, the other group tried to stop them, and they didn't listen, and the third group was neutral, and they neither worshipped nor they stopped. And so Sid Harun was staying with them, and he tried to stop, but they wouldn't listen to him. And then after 40 years, when Musa salam descended down from the Tur, and he went with the book to the Bani Israel, he found out, and he was very, very upset. And then eventually they were punished. So Okay. After that, um, then Bani Israel, they wanted to go back to their original place, which was Palestine, which was Al-Qudus. But Al-Qudus was occupied by a different nation who were uh, very tall and very brave, and uh, they kind of wild people. And Bani Israel was ordered to fight in the leadership of Musa alayhi salam and do jihad. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised them that you will you will get your place back, you will get Al-Qudus back if you but you have to do jihad for it. And I promise you that you will win. So they were given clear glad tidings. But the condition was they had to fight. So they went under the leadership of Musa salam, and they went close to Al-Qudus. Okay. So actually, what happened was they they went to close to Al-Qudus, and they found out that those people, they could not find the courage to fight with them, and they came back. Okay, they returned, and Musa alayhi salam kept persuading them to believe in Allah and to trust in Allah, and that Allah has promised to fulfill, um, to give them victory, but they were just too scared. As a punishment, they were imprisoned in in the desert Sinai, and the valley of Tih, and this is most likely that place. So all of that is desert Sinai. Okay, and these are the plains or valley of Tih, and they were imprisoned in this thing, and kind of sounds strange how anyone could get imprisoned in an open space. But what happened was, um, Allah has the control of space and time and everything. So they used to walk and walk and walk and walk in all day from morning till evening, and by evening, in the evening, they would find themselves back again over here. So it's like a space was curved for them, kind of. So they would try to walk in any direction, and all day of walking, they would again find themselves back from where they started. And so this was a punishment to them, but it was a punishment of also blessed with favors as well, because they were the chosen nation kind of at that time. And in this place, in this valley, they had no means of business, no means of trading, no means of agriculture. They couldn't raise animals, they couldn't do anything because there was no uh, habitation there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used to send them food called man and salwa, right? And man was something sweet, and salwa was the quails, you know, you know, roasted quails were sent down to them, cooked from the heaven, and they would just catch them and they would eat them. And clouds would cover them from sun and so on. So in the prison, in the punishment was also with uh, luxuries, kind of, but they were not allowed to leave that place. And so Musa, and that took, they were trapped in this uh, valley for 40 years as a punishment of refusing to fight and refusing to do jihad. From after that, uh, and eventually Musa alayhi salam passed away, and the next prophet was sent, which was Yusha ibn Nun alayhi salam. And then one whole generation of Bani Israel passed away, and a new generation came, and the new generation agreed to fight under the leadership of Yusha ibn Nun alayhi salam. And so they went to Al Qudus and they did jihad, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them victory over that Amalika nation, which were like apparently looking, they were like giants, and they kicked them out. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them that now you have been given victory, you should be very, very humble. And when you enter the city of Al Qudus, um, enter it in a very humble posture and repeating the words loudly, saying hittatun. Hittatun means oh, we ask forgiveness, we ask forgiveness. But some of those people, they were very, very mischievous and very rude, and they replaced the word hittatun with hintatun. And hinta means wheat that is used to cook bread. Because what happened was when they were stuck in this, they were given the man and the salwa the same food every day, and then they got tired and sick and tired of that. And it says they approached Musa alayhi salam, oh Musa, we need um, other vegetables, we need onions, we need this, we need potatoes, and this and this and this. We're tired of eating. So Musa alayhi salam said, are you crazy? You are given heavenly food and you are asking for low grade food like onions and potatoes, which and they said, yeah, we want a variety. We're just tired of all of that. Similarly, they wanted, there was no, this is a desert, so there was no drinking water there. So when they felt thirsty, then Musa alayhi salam was ordered to hit his staff on a stone and then on a rock, and then 12 streams of water started emerging from that rock. So yeah, eventually when they entered the city, they were some of the people, they changed the word instead of hettatun, which means asking for forgiveness. They started calling hentatun, which means asking for wheat. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished them because of that. And they were, a plague was sent as a punishment among the Bani Israel because of this rudeness and this disobedience. And about 70,000 of them were killed in that plague. And then Yusha ibn Nun alayhi salam passed away, and then Prophet Shamawil, the next one, was given prophethood, and he continued to give da'wat in Bani Israel. And Bani Israel, what happened was, even though they kicked that Amalekite nation out of here, they would time to time come back and have fights with them. They even stole the Tabut of Sakina, which was a box which contained remnants of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam and Sayyidina Harun alayhi salam. There, some of their things that they used to use, and so those were the items of barakah and blessings. And so uh, Bani Israel used to give those items a lot of respect, but Amalekah, they stole it from them and they snatched it, the Tabut of Sakina, from them, and they took it with them. Um, then Prophet Shemawil was there as a prophet, next one. And then Bani Israel was feeling that they need a leadership in the form of a king. And so they asked the Prophet Shemawil to ask Allah to give them a king so that they can fight under that king and get the things back and get rid of Amalekah further on. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made uh, a person called Talut as their king, and the Talut was not a very well-off person. He was a poor person, and so they started objecting, and as it was their habit to object on every commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they said, he is a poor person, how can we accept him as a king? Why didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a rich person as a king, and this and that? And so um, then Shemuel alayhi salam, the prophet, he said, okay, but this is the king that Allah selected. And he said, how do we know that he is the king that Allah selected? So there was just no end to objections. And so Shemuel was given the wahi and sent wahi that tell them that the tabut of Sakina, the box with the sacred things of belongings of Musa alayhi salam and Harun salam, that they were missing and they wanted so badly, that he will be able to get that box for them, and this will be a sign, a symbol that he is the chosen one as a chosen king for them. So Prophet Shamabil alayhi salam said that to them, and what happened eventually, um, that Amalika, they were keeping that box of Sakina with them, and because of the will of Allah, diseases started to spread among Amalika wherever the box was. Wherever they would store that box, that in that area a disease would start to erupt. And then they realized that this is the box that is the source of the problems. And what they did was they put the box on the back of a donkey. They tied it up, and then they kicked the donkey out from their area. So they get rid of that box that is causing all the problems for them. And so the donkey was under the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Eventually, he reached the house of Talut, and the Talut took the box and he showed it to people, and eventually Bani Israel agreed that he is the one that is appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then um, Amalekah was although they were kicked out from Canaan and Al Qudus, they were settled on the outskirts, and from there they would come regularly and attack. So they, under the leadership of Talut, they fought their king Jalut, and they defeated. And uh, at that time, Dawood alayhi salam was a young boy of 13 and 14 years old, and he killed Jalut. He was the one who became the hero at that time. And then he grew up, and eventually he was blessed. He was the first one that was blessed with both a prophethood and the kingship among the Bani Israel. And that from there, one of the golden period of Bani Israel started. And so then his son, Sulaiman salam, got the prophethood and the kinghood as well. And they were settled in Al Qudus, and the Bani Israel were having the best of their time. That was a golden era of Bani Israel. But they kept on disobeying their prophets, and after Sulaiman salam had a marvelous kingdom that was given to him. The air was given under the wind was given under his control. He knew the language of the animals. The animals were under his control. The jinns were under his control, and so and so. And he got those jinns to develop, to construct the temple, the Bet al Qudus as well. And so, but after Sulaiman al-Salam passed away, then they again started going astray, and they started accusing Sulaiman al-Salam as of magic, and they mixed up miracles with magic. Okay, so they got confused, and they started saying that Sulaiman al-Salam, what he showed was not miracles, but he controlled the jinns through magic, and he used to do black magic and stuff, na'uzubillah, which is haram. And because of their, again, misguidance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished them. And what happened was, in Babylon by that time was controlled by a king called Bukht Nasr, and he was not a believer. So he took his army, and he marched to Bet al-Qudus, al-Qudus, which is Jerusalem. And then he attacked Bani Israel, and he killed about like 600,000 of them, of the Jews. He killed them in Masjid al-Aqsa or al-Qudus, and 600,000 of the Jews he captured as slaves, as prisoners, and he brought them to Babylon. And he destroyed every inch of Masjid al-Qudus. Okay, didn't leave anything. Everything was destroyed. Masjid al-Aqsa was destroyed. Al-Qudus was destroyed. Everything was destroyed. And there was nothing, nobody left there to even weep or cry over the bodies of the dead over there. And so 600,000 almost he killed here, and the rest 600,000 he just brought as a prisoner over here. It was that time uh, that Sayyidina Uzair alayhi salam, the Prophet Uzair alayhi salam, he was passing by uh, Masjid al-Aqsa or Al-Quds or Jerusalem on his donkey with his food there. And he saw that the place of Al-Quds is like is shattered to the ground. It's just nothing is left there. It's totally destroyed. And he stopped and he started wondering that can this place ever become alive again? Can this place ever become inhabited again? Is it possible such after such a massive destruction? And while he was thinking, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to show his prophet uh, the abilities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had and that things can change. Allah put him to sleep. And he was put to sleep for 100 years. And along with that, when he woke up after 100 years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked him, how long have you been asleep? And he said, maybe a few hours or so. And Allah said, no, you were put to sleep 100 hours. You were asleep 100 years, not a few hours, but 100 years you were asleep. And if you don't believe it, I mean, if it's too difficult to believe, uh, look at your donkey. And he looked at his donkey, and the donkey was like converted to just bones. And even those bones were like almost dust. And then Allah said, look at your food that you were carrying with you. And the food was still fresh and warm. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, now look at the city that you were wondering whether that city would ever come to life back. And he looked at that city, and that city was alive. Everything was constructed. People were living. It was like full marketplace and everything. The life, the whole thing was back up again. Uh, and what happened was there was a king of Persia, Cyrus, who over here in a city called his headquarters was in a city called uh, um, Pesargadae, and that King Cyrus he traveled from here, and he had a soft corner for those Jews. So he fought with Bukht Nasser, and he released all the prisoners, all the Jew prisoners, and he took them back to Al-Quds, and he had them settled over there. So he got them free. And so this is how they got their established settlement back. The other thing that happened was when Bukhtasar killed them and captured them, he also took their book, the Torah, and he destroyed all of it. So they had nothing left with them. They lost their book, Torah. So eventually when Uzair uh, came back after 100 years of sleep, and then he was sent to Bani Israel to do Dawat and Tabligh, as a miracle, Uzair reproduced the entire Torah from his memory as a miracle. When they saw him do that, a group of them, they became misguided and they started calling him the son of Allah. They said, who could have such a miraculous memory, but only a son of Allah? So he's a son of Allah. He's a son of God and son of Allah. Na'uzubillah. But it was only a small a group of Bani Israel that went into that misguidance. The rest were still practicing Tawheed, and those people don't exist now. Okay, they're finished. That sect of Jews were finished. And what happened was, and that again was part of the golden period. They lived, they prospered, and everything. And but as happened again and again in them, they were very, very disobedient people, and again they started slipping from the right path and um, going to the wrong direction. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent another punishment to them, and that punishment was uh, a, an emperor, a Roman emperor from Rome, Titus, whose name was Titus. So he used to rule over Italy, and his capital was Rome. He started moving from there, and he started capturing all of these areas, both on the top side and both on the bottom side, the south side. And which eventually he captured all the areas till Palestine, and he captured Al-Quds, and he uh, killed hundreds and thousands of Yehud and took control of uh, the Al-Quds, city of Al-Quds, and the Palestine. Okay. And during that time, and that was such a big attack that a lot of them were killed, and then a lot of them started to migrate to different places to save themselves. And that's called the diaspora, the big diaspora there. They migrated, and many of them settled in Misr, many of them settled in Medina. At least three of the tribes, they moved to Medina and they settled in Medina. Many of them moved to Iraq and settled over there. A large number of them moved to Iran and also Afghanistan. Okay, and they started living there, and they started adopting the language of that region. So they forgot Hebrew. Okay, and wherever they were living, they started using their language, and so that continued until and they were and so Titus, the Roman Empire, the Roman emperor, was in control of this place. Original religion of Titus or the Roman emperor was Greek mythology. So they used to worship Greek gods. But then eventually he accepted Christianity, and they um, got hold of the Jerusalem or Al-Qudus until and that they continued to hold control until the times of Sayyidina Umar, the Khilafat of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala, when he defeated the Romans and he got Al-Qudus back. And at that time, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala declared Al-Qudus as an open city. Before that time, the Jews were forbidden to enter that place. The Titus, after killing them and after throwing them away out, he put a ban on Jews to enter that place. They were not allowed. So the Umar radiallahu ta'ala declared it as an open city, and then Jews were allowed to come and worship over there. But he put a condition that Jews can only come there for worship and they have to leave. They cannot settle over there in that place. They don't qualify. Okay, so three tribes. So out of the 12, three tribes of Yehud, they moved to Medina, and their name was Banu Banu Qaynuqa and Banu Nazir and Banu Qurayza. These three tribes you will listen to again and again in Tafsir and Hadith, because they used to give trouble to the Muslims as well. And so from that was roughly from 1770 AD till 638 AD, after the Isa alayhi salam, they Jews were forbidden to enter Jerusalem. So this is more or less so Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu got the control back, and then in 1099 year 1099, after Isa alayhi salam was lifted up, the Crusaders attacked the Al-Qudus and Palestine, and they captured Al-Qudus again. And that's after 461 years of Muslim rule. And then the Al-Qudus or Palestine remained under the control of the Crusaders, Christian Crusaders, for 90 years. After 90 years, Sultan Salahuddin Ayyubi, rahimahullah, a Kurdish, he recaptured it back in 1187. And that's when they they lost it, and Muslims got it back. And then eventually, during the times of Ottoman Emperor Sultan Abdul Hamid II, the the Al-Qudus was taken back from us. Okay, and till now we are waiting for Salahuddin Ayyubi to come. So that was more or less the map on the map, the different places and how um, the different locations that played their part. Okay, so let's we're almost at the end of the time, but let's go back to um, so this was the main gist of all the Yehud and everything, and we talked about. Okay, and the main theme of Surah Al-Baqarah. And so we already talked about all of that. Um, and during that time, most likely when they were in Misr, um, the issue, the incident of a murder incident murder happened, and an old man was killed by his relative for acquiring the inheritance, and nobody knew who killed it. And so they came to Musa, Bani Israel came to Musa alayhi salam, and most likely that at that time of the Pharaoh, that happened in the time of Pharaoh when Musa alayhi salam was doing da'wat among the Bani Israel. And they said, look, somebody was killed and we cannot find the murderer, so if you can help. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered Musa alayhi salam to order them to slaughter a cow and then use one of the pieces of meat from the cow and hit the murdered person, the corpse of the murdered person with that piece of meat or flesh. And when you do that, the corpse would become alive momentarily and would reveal the name of the killer or the murderer. And so when Musa salam told them, look, you need to slaughter a cow and do this, and so they started making fun again. Are you crazy? Are you kidding? This is, what is this for, and this and that. Eventually, and then they started asking so many different questions. Okay, what's the size of the cow should be? What's the color of the cow should be? What's the weight and this and this and that. Every time Musa salam would tell them something, they'd say, we're still not clear. Could you be more specific? Eventually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every time they ask more details, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started giving them more and more details. And they found it very hard to find that cow because they have asked so many questions, making it difficult for them to find a specific cow. And eventually they found that cow with one of the persons, and that person also realized that this is the cow they're looking for, and he charged an arm and a leg for that cow, and they have to pay a lot. So from that time, this has become kind of a saying that if someone does too much, asks too much questions, or we kind of use that word that, don't make it a cow of Bani Israel, don't get yourself in trouble. So had the Bani Israel, the very first time when they were told to slaughter a cow, had they picked up any cow and slaughtered it, it would have worked for them, but they didn't. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for punishment, started answering their question, making it more and more specific, and they found it very hard to find that cow. So eventually they did, and they cut the piece of flesh from there or meat from there, and they hit the dead, and the dead, became alive momentarily. He told the name of the killer, and then he died again. So that's the name. That's the main incident in this, and that's why the name of the surah. Okay, and also talks about the word inshallah in there, because after asking so many questions, eventually they said, "Wa inna insha'Allahu la muhtadun." You know, uh, if you can give more specific details of the cow, inshallah we'll be able to find it. And eventually they use the word inshallah, and in tafsir, the ulama says, the Mufassirin said that it is mentioned in hadith actually, that had they never said inshallah, Allah would never have revealed to them the true description of the cow. So this is the power of inshallah, and there's another place in Surah Al-Kahf when we come there also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Rasulullah that whenever you intend to do something in future, always use the word inshallah, and inshallah means if Allah wills, because everything is in control of Allah only. I cannot do it no matter how many resources I have, no matter how much I'm sure about that. If Allah doesn't will it, it will not happen. Okay. And I talk about Yehud as to how they would manipulate the Torah and they would change the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for material benefit, for money. They would take bribe and issue wrong fatwa and stuff. Um, so, and by the way, people when they listen to such things, they start thinking about our scholars and our ulama. And as the image of our ulama as portrayed by the media, and this is absolutely incorrect uh, perception that because the media is just not in the media is all controlled by Jews wherever that media is. If it's the media, whether it's the media of Pakistan, the media of some other Muslim or Arab country, at the moment they're all controlled by Jews. Okay, the non-Muslims, and the perception they create of the scholars is absolutely incorrect and wrong and humiliating. Um, Even though I don't disagree that there are good and bad people everywhere, and there might be some black sheeps in here as well. But far and wide, for majority of the cases, the ulama, they are very caring and careful about all of these things. And although you may find that there are some examples that follow the Bani Israel, but in most of the cases, the ulama are very uh, careful, and because of that, the Deen of Allah has been preserved, is preserved for now. And Pakistan, and also if you include the India as well, is a source of authentic Deen, is a center of authentic Deen. And it's because most of the scholars over here, they don't sell things for material world. Okay? They don't sell their souls for material benefit. And you will find that most of the scholars, most of the ulama, they are living a very humble life and they're serving for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they are not ready to accept large sources of money and for the wrong things. They don't give up to the pressures of the government. While in several Arab countries, you will see that a majority of the scholars have given up to the pressures of the government and given up for the material benefits that they seek. And you will see scholars in some of the countries living a very luxurious lifestyles because they are supported and sponsored by government and they are in control of the government, but not in Pakistan and not in India. You will not see that. Very rarely would be some case, but most of them are living a very, very humble life and they're happy with that. And because of such people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept the deen intact and they are such sensitive to the deen of Allah, to the changes in the deen of Allah, that anytime any minor crack appears in the wall of the deen, the scholars over here, they are ready to defend it because the breaking of the wall starts from a single crack. So we can't tolerate even a single crack in there. So this does not really hold in our case. Uh, then black magic was they started in the times when they were in Babylon. They getting involved. They starting to get involved in black magic, the Yehud, and that was after Sulaiman alayhi salam. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent them sent two angels, Harut and Marut, as test to them. And Harut and Marut would teach people black magic, but before doing that, they would tell them, look, we are a test. We are angels and sent as test to you. The magic is haram and you're not allowed to be indulged in them. But if you still want, we can teach you that. And people would come and people would learn from them black magic. And using that, they would separate husband and wife, cause separations in her husband and wife, and harm people. And this is what Quran tells us. And obviously they fail the test. Okay. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about international relationship rules over here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ما يود الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب ولا المشركين أن ينزل عليكم من خير من ربكم. Allah says that Jews and Christians, they don't want any good come to Muslims. Okay, you don't expect any benefit from them. Even if if you see some khair coming from them, some benefit coming from them, it's in disguise a problem for you. So don't expect any good stuff from them. They just hate you. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clearly saying, not just one place, but in many places Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us uh, uh, details of international relationships. Because when we are dealing with other nations like Yahud and Nasara, we have to be very, very careful. Now I see sometimes when I listen to some YouTube lectures by, Tom, Dick, and Harry's, and um, particularly one of the speaker, I'm not going to name it, but you might be able to guess, I don't know. That person started to, approach this topic that we're dealing with foreign nations, Yahud and Nasara, and if you want to know how they behave and how they think, you should study Bible and Torah. Now, nothing could be far away from the truth than this one. Um, how in the hell uh, reading Bible and Torah is going to help you understand Yod and Nasara? No Bible is intact. You've lost the original book. No, the Torah is not intact. You've lost it. In addition, these nations, they don't follow their books. They're not practicing. They're totally secular now. And even their religious uh, uh, groups, they are not following the true teachings of Bible and Quran, of Bible and Torah. Okay, so you don't get anything out of reading those books, and that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. With we haven't read our Quran. We don't know a word of our Quran properly, and then we go about reading their Bible and Torah. I mean, this makes no sense. It's totally a senseless and stupid thing. And this people started thinking whatever they like without proper guidance. So all the details, if you want to deal with Yahud and Nasara, if you want to find out how they think, if you want to find out how they plot against Muslims or what you could get from them, the best book is Quran, because Quran is unchanged. It hasn't been changed, and in there Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains in detail. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in other ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, on your face, something like this, on your face, they uh, meet you like they're your friend. But inside, they're burning with anger. Okay? And they want to kill you, they want to damage you as much as they can. This is their inside feelings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling. This is the wahi, the ilm of wahi. You cannot get any further information from anywhere. Allah is explaining in his book what they actually feel internally. What can you get from Bible reading Bible and Torah? Nothing. Okay. So this we need to understand that all the benefit we receive is will be from Quran. We don't need to turn to any other book. So similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they don't want you to remain Muslims. They want you to turn away from Islam. Okay. Another place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Baqarah, وَلَن تَرْضَ عَنْكَ الْيَهُودُ وَالنَّصَارَى حَتَّى تَتَّبِعَ مِلَّتَهُمْ. They will not be happy with you until you leave everything of Islam and become exactly like them. So particularly people who are living in the West, our Muslim brothers and sisters who are not very closely attached to mashayikh and ulama and fuqaha, they find themselves under pressure to please the non-Muslims, because particularly when they socialize and when they integrate with them at the work level, at the social level, okay, and this here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving a golden rule. Look, uh, you don't take any pressures from them, and you don't be defensive for your deen, because we know and we should have a conviction and faith that whatever teachings Islam has given us, those are the best. We don't need to be defensive. We need to be 100% sure that this is the best thing that has been given to us, and there's nothing better than this one. And no matter how much we try to please them, they will never be happy. The only thing that will be happy, make them happy, is we become exactly like them, believe all the Islam and everything about Islam. They will keep on saying, do more. Okay. And this is what happens in the international level as well. And then there are about abrogation of verses, and then the change of the Qibla. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I talked about that. And then Ibrahim alayhi salam being made an imam, and then the building of Kaaba by Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam, and Ibrahim alayhi salam making the dua for Mecca. And because of the dua, we see that Mecca has all sorts of resources, even though it doesn't grow anything, but everything is present over there. And Rasulullah made a similar dua for Medina, and so Medina has even more barakah than Mecca. Okay, right. All right. I guess we will just stop over here. And this is the finish of just one, and just two is about the change of Qibla and virtues of jihad and shahadat and some of the ahkam. As we mentioned in the highlights, ahkam are being given over here. Talked about Hajj and Umrah, halal food, haram food. Okay, qisas, the capital punishment for murder, which is killing that person, the murderer. Uh, Instructions about how to distribute the inheritance and the writing of the will and stuff, fasting, and all of those things. So I guess we'll yeah. Then Juz 3, Surah Al-Baqarah expands to goes to Juz 3 as well, part of Juz 3. So Ayatul Kursi is there in Juz 3. And then Ibrahim salam's incidents with Namrud, we talked about that as well. And, so, and the story of Hazrat Uzair and Bani Israel, and we talked about that. Uh, okay. And this is an incident where Sayyidina Ibrahim asked Allah to show him how he brings dead to life, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him to slaughter the birds and distribute them in different mountain tops and then call them, and then they came flying back to Ibrahim salam. So, and then talks about the severity of the haram uh, act of charging interest. And this is the end of Surah Al-Baqarah. And so the quickly going through the highlights once again, which we started with. So we covered all of that. So highlights, most of them think one topic is detailed discussion of Yahud and Bani Israel. And then, so in a little more detail is about challenge to create a surah like Quran, or in story of Adam salam as Khalifa. And then Yahud, details of Yahud, and then magic in Bani Israel, and story of Sayyidina Uzair alayhi salam as the prophet, and story of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam, and encounters of Ibrahim alayhi salam with Namrud, change of Qibla, and a bunch of different ahkam. These are the highlights of Surah Al-Baqarah, inshallah. So we'll stop over here. And if there's any question anybody would like to ask, just feel free to do that.